All right. A memorial service was held today for Jane Goodell. It was incredible. You should have seen the fancy catering setup. It was bananas. Chip.
Kenny, how are you?
We started the interview with a banana joke. I did not get a laugh. I'm not mad at you. I'm not mad, but I do feel like that was some of my best material today. Congressman Chip Roy in the studio right now.
Great to be here.
Not a fan of banana jokes. First thing we've learned about you this afternoon.
Well, I'm just having flashbacks like Eddie Murphy sticking a banana in the tailpipe in Beverly Hills Cop. That's all I've got going in my head.
A creature of my own heart.
Yeah.
Congressman Chip Roy is here. You want to be Attorney General, and I've got a lot of questions for you. Some of these were written by listeners. Some of them were written by some of your biggest critics. Why don't we just dive into the main thing here? This is the thing people often bring up. Now that you're running for office, Trump's margin of victory in Texas was the biggest of any 20 years. We hadn't seen a guy do this well in the state of Texas. You are kind of famous for criticizing Donald Trump. And I don't remember this happening. Someone pointed this out to me on social media. You have been accused of referring to MAGA supporters as MAGA F words. It happened in December 2024 in an interview with Steve Deasy. I cannot play the soundbite on the air, obviously, as it contains some language. Why don't we start off with that? What happened?
Yeah, well, first of all, great to be on the show. And I always start with the premise that I have a job as a member of Congress, right, in Article 1, to stand up for my constituents and go do what I think is right and defend the Constitution, defend the rule of law, and represent them. So I do that, and I do that to the best of my ability, and I feel confident that the people that have elected me over and over again support what I've been doing in defending them. And in that vein, what I would point out is a poll came out recently, or a score, looking at how people fare with respect to their fidelity to President Trump's agenda and our current platform.
Sure.
I scored number 1 in Texas, number 2 in the entire House of Representatives, and number 5 out of the House and the Senate. So when it comes down to actually delivering and working with the president, the big, beautiful bill on legislation, the Lake and Riley Act, where we got good legislation put in place, I could go down the list. No one's been doing more to advance the president's agenda. Go back in time. I was, yes, a supporter of my friend who I've known for over a decade, Governor Ron DeSantis, who's been kicking butt in Florida. In that interview you're talking about, let me set the stage, because this matters.
Sure, it does, yeah.
I had taken a public position that at the time, the funding for Ukraine, which was front and center, and a part of, remember, the debate over the Speaker of the House and what the House Representatives would do, I had taken a position that under no circumstances should we give any money to Ukraine at all. However, if money does go to Ukraine, you certainly should secure the border of the United States and pass H.R. 2 first as a condition. In other words, a negotiating position. That was a strong position. So some people came at me for saying I was pro-Ukraine. Oh, Chip Roy, and he is a rhino, and he wants to give money to Ukraine. Now, stuff like that happens all the time. It doesn't bother me. But when they start running a campaign to come after my staff and calling people in my front office and using foul language and attacking my team for a false narrative and a false meme, I reacted. Now, what did I say? I didn't say anything about MAGA mother effers. What I said was, you guys out there want to come at me and call me a rhino? Come here to my office and debate me, because I've spent a lifetime fighting for conservatism, and I've devoted my entire career to limited government and outing the swamp long before anybody was talking about it. And so I would match my record against anybody on that front. And to the point that I said what I said, I meant it about the individuals who were wrongly lying about our position and then attacking my staff. I'll say it today. You got a problem? Come to my office. Come debate me. I will beat you in the debate, because that's what I do.
I'm okay. So to that point, you're known for being principled. Look, I'm a Ron Paul guy. I love a principled lawmaker. Do you feel like there was ever a point where you weren't pragmatic enough? I mean, you took a stance that what Trump did was impeachable in 2024. Do you still feel that way?
I fought
In
impeachment.
2020, excuse me.
I
obviously.
fought, 2020. I fought impeachment with every ounce of my being. Voted against impeachment twice. Called out the crazy arguments that were being made against the president in the first impeachment and the second. My point at the time. Now remember, rewind the clock on the electors because that's what that's all about. Pre-November 2020, I was fighting, saying, guys, mail-in ballots is filled with fraud and it's going to create a problem in this election. Right after the election, 2 days later, I flew to Atlanta, met with Cleta Mitchell, first met Marjorie Taylor Greene, met with election officials in Fulton County, Georgia, trying to get to the bottom of the truth, was then assailed because my text leaked to the New York Times and the CNN with Mark Meadows because we were trying to get the truth. I said, guys, I need evidence. I need ammo was the quote that I used so that we could go do the one thing that mattered. What was that? Get one state where we could prove the case that we needed a different slate of electors because President Trump had actually won that state. Then fast forward into January, that didn't happen. On the day that we were voting on the electors, we only had 50 slates of electors. We didn't have another slate of electors. My view, and some can disagree with this, my view then and remains now, you cannot have the Vice President of the United States unilaterally refusing to accept the electors. Because under no circumstances, and I'll say this right now as Attorney General of Texas, under no circumstances are people in Pennsylvania, people in California, or the vice president going to be able to tell me what the electors are from the state of Texas. We send our slate of electors as Texans to Washington, and the job is to count them. Now, you can disagree with that, but my fight from the election in 2020 through January 6th was to work as hard as we could to prove fraud and flip a slate of electors. We didn't do it. So my point then at that time was you cannot pressure the vice president to not count the electors. And at the end of the day, we got through all of that. We fought the impeachment. The president beat the lawfare. The president got elected. And the president is now doing great things if we'll actually focus on delivering. And right now, we're going to get our butts kicked next November if Republicans in Congress don't continue to work forward and deliver an agenda and drive down affordability for the American people so we can win next November. Because guess what will happen if we don't? They'll impeach him again.
I mean, I think that's a given, right? If we lose the House, which we might, if we lose the Senate, they remove him from office. And that brings me to another topic. You worked for Cornyn. You're famous for being associated with a guy who is spending $3 million a week right now so he could stay in office. His opponent did not endorse you. Ken Paxton, a very popular attorney general. He's a populist. You're a populist. Obviously, two different kind of populists. Let's start off with this. One of my favorite things about Ken Paxton is he has lawsuits with balls of steel on him every week. He's suing every day. Most people in the MAGA movement didn't even really understand why he was getting impeached. I've always said if you can't explain to a guy on an oil rig or a truck driver what Attorney General Ken Paxton did wrong, then it probably wasn't that bad. Do you disagree with that?
Well, first of all, you went back to my first job out of law school where I went to Washington and worked on the Senate Judiciary Committee. And yes, it was in Senator Cornyn's office with, frankly, some of our best conservative lawyers. Jim Ho is one of our best lawyers on the Fifth Circuit right now. Myself, Reed O'Connor is now a federal judge in the district court who has struck down large numbers of bad pieces of legislation and is one of the judges we go to when we want to go file suits, which when I was Ken Paxton's first assistant attorney general, which, by the way, I did for a reason. I knew Ken for a long time. I was his first assistant. I was his first assistant because we're ideologically the same. And we laid out the plan, which has been carried out for the last decade, to do exactly that, which is sue the pants off of bureaucrats, sue the pants off of big corporatists. And we actually developed a strategy to be able to go into courts that would be more favorable. Remember, Democrats have been doing that for years. We weren't doing it. So now we started going to the Northern District, into that court that I just talked about, Reed O'Connor or Judge Kaczmarek or any of the other good judges where we can get some rulings that actually reflect the people of Texas. So we laid out that strategy. Look, I've been very public about this. I was spent 16 months with Ken, and it was a good 16 months. We built a great team with strong, solid conservatives. Brantley Starr worked on that office. He's now a great conservative federal judge. Bernie McNamee was in that office. He was a Trump appointee to the FERC Commission. Brantley was a Trump appointee. I could go down the list. Jim Davis is a conservative. He's now the head of the University of Texas, and he's now moving UT in a better direction with Civitas and a lot of things they're doing. We had a great team. I just ultimately had a disagreement in how you do things in the office, okay? And I've always left it at that. I'm going to leave it at that. I think it kind of all speaks for itself. We just disagreed about how you do things. It's not the first or the last time that strong conservatives might disagree. John Adams and Jefferson notoriously fought and then, came back together. At the end of the day, Ken's done a great job in litigating and defending the state of Texas. I can agree to disagree about the style of the way you do it, and I'm going to just focus on the way I do things.
Do you still think that he should have resigned?
Look, I fought and never made a comment about the impeachment issues there. I didn't, it had nothing to do with any of that. That was a state issue. It's been asked and answered. The House made their position. The Senate acquitted effectively. And Ken's been moving on and continued to litigate and defend the state of Texas. I will just say this. There were people in that office that I worked with who were being thrown under the bus publicly that were good public servants, including a lifetime Texas Ranger who was battling cancer, who had solved his sister's cold case homicide 30 years later. Great respect in the law enforcement community. And I felt the need to defend people that I had hired. And I stand with, as I said before, when I got mad at the people that came at my team, the people that I hire, that I pull on my team, I'm going to defend them. That's just who I am.
All right, let's talk about this. So as the OAG, this is the position you want, is Ken Paxton's job. He is known for these lawsuits that just,
sure,
they're ballsy. No other AG in the state would do this. Would you do anything differently?
No, we just build on what, again, we started when I was his first assistant, laying into that and carrying out great cases. And we would continue that and go even further. Look, that's just where it is. We've got now even a heightened degree of a need for an attorney general who will go to bat to fight to defend Texas. We have a massive march of radical Sharia adherents and Islamists who want to remake our state and our country, and we've got to combat it. We got to go even further with respect to what's happening at Epic City or with this, Islamic Center in Houston. We've got to go even further with respect to, for example, Plyler v. Doe. A lot of the listeners out there are going, wait, what's Plyler v. Doe? That was the case in 1982 or 3, where the Supreme Court said, sorry, Texas, because it was a Texas case, you have to provide an education for illegal alien children here with your taxpayer money. We should fight that. We've got to go even further to stop that a ridiculous mandate from the Supreme Court. There are other things that I think we can do to be even more aggressive with respect to the DAs that are putting criminals on the streets that are funded by Soros. We need to go after the network and the vast network of the C3s and all of the money that are coming in from the foundations through Soros and through the various leftists and Marxists that are moving people into our country and pushing the Islamic agenda. So there's so many fronts that we got to continue to fight. The last point I'll make is the corporatism. Ken did a great job going after Google with the opinion they got there and got the ruling with $1.5 billion for Americans or Texans' privacy. But we've got to go even further with respect to the corporatism that's going on in our country, where big corporations and boards in New York are telling us what we need to do in Texas with their woke agenda, buying up our ranches, buying up our meat packing facilities. Hell, we even got private equity buying up Whataburger, right? Like, we've got to make sure that Texans own Texas, and that's one of the original charters of the Office of the Attorney General is to deal with corporations. So we've got a lot of work we need to do to continue Ken's legacy and to defend the state very well. And, I'm proud to have Ted Cruz's endorsement, former Solicitor General of Texas, and he had the most cases before the Supreme Court before Scott Keller, whom I hired along with Ken Paxton to be our next Solicitor General when I was there in the AG's office, and Scott worked with me in Ted Cruz's office. So, a lot of the strongest legal minds are standing alongside me.
All right, let's talk about that. When you were a lawmaker, you voted for Kevin McCarthy to be the House Speaker. You were the final ballot, Chip. This followed a marathon, 4-day process, 15 total ballots, longest Speaker election since 1859. I love American history. Obviously, Kevin was not well liked by a lot of conservatives. We all know what happened with him. Looking back on it, how do you feel about that vote?
Yeah, well, that framing, respectfully, isn't quite right. Remember what led to that. There were 20 of us who refused to seat the United States House of Representatives Speaker for 60 days while we were getting pilloried by people in Texas, including activists who were blowing up my phone on the House floor saying, Chip, you're going to hand the speakership over to Hakeem Jeffries. What are you doing? I said, have a little patience for those of us who are trying to fight the fight to deliver what you want us to deliver on. And guess what we were able to do in January of 23? deliver 3 conservatives on the Rules Committee, which is the powerful committee which determines what gets to the House floor. 4 conservatives on the Appropriations Committee to reset how we handle the appropriations and spending fight. A whole laundry list of other things, including putting the Texas border plan, which I drafted and got the entire Texas delegation to sign on to, which was the first time we had a plan that was for border security without amnesty and without future flow, H-1B, all of the nonsense. We put that together with building the wall and all the stuff and funding for the wall. And we got that to be turned into, and that agreement with Kevin, the first big bill we passed that spring was H.R. 2, the first time Republicans have done that in a generation. That was all a part of that deal that we struck. Myself, Andy Biggs, strong conservative and former Freedom Caucus chairman, Byron Donalds, Scott Perry, Matt Gaetz, Lauren Boebert, all of us, there were 20 of us, including other Texans like Michael Cloud and Keith Self. We negotiated that, and guess what? We would not have delivered the big, beautiful bill for President Trump had we not done that 2.5 years ago. Because part of leadership is looking around the curve, looking down the road, and setting the stage for success and taking the arrows in the process. That's what I've always been willing to do. And I did it that week. I could go back and show you the laundry list of text messages blowing me up on the floor from donors and activists saying, don't risk this. You can't do this. Just make Kevin the speaker. I said, hold on. I'm not going to just make Kevin the speaker. We need to change the House. When we finally decided to do the deal, we got major concessions that reshaped the House of Representatives for a long time to come. Then that led to the result that then 9 months later, Matt Gaetz filed the motion to vacate the chair. And then we ended up fighting through for a month, and we ended up with Mike Johnson. And Mike, by the way, I fought Mike on the Ukraine H.R. 2 border security piece that we started this whole interview with. But at the end of the day, Mike has been a more conservative speaker, and we've been working with Mike, and we've been delivering, got the big, beautiful bill done with a 3-seat majority in the House. And I'm proud of what we've been able to do through those changes.
Do you think that Matt Gaetz would have been a better attorney general than Pam Bondi?
Well, I'm not going to get into comparison. I supported Matt right out of the gate. I supported all of the president's nominees strongly. When J.D. was being attacked last summer, I was one of the first to publicly come out in his defense. When Bobby Kennedy was being attacked, people said, well, Chip Roy, why are you supporting Bobby Kennedy of all people? Because I knew Bobby would shake things up. I wrote an op-ed in defense of Bobby, in defense of Tulsi. Matt, when he was nominated, defended him because I trusted what the president was trying to do to shake up the town. And these were all people that were going to take on Washington. That was the key, right? And, I think through the first term, we kind of had that kind of learning exercise that, hey, these people who know Washington, they're not really the ones that are going to change things up. And so, Matt, Bobby, Tulsi, those guys would. Now, Matt, obviously, name got pulled, and then Pam became the AG, and we've been working with Pam since the beginning of the year. And we continue to try to work with the administration in all levels. And frankly, I've been very impressed overall with the administration. They haven't lost anybody. They've got strong talent. Scott Bessent's been doing a great job at Treasury. Marco Rubio's been kicking butt as the Secretary of State. I've got good friends throughout the administration. Russ Vought is the head of OMB. He's one of my best friends in the world, much less in politics. Russ is a great friend, and he's been doing wonders at OMB with the rescissions package. And by the way, we're not talking about all the wins that we're getting in rescissions, cutting NPR, cutting PBS.
I love that.
These are all things that you would have said 5 years ago. God, we never do this. Well, we're doing it.
I mean, it is great. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot to be said about that. All right, let's talk about your opponents real quick. I don't know why Joan Huffman's running for AG. I'm not even going to try to. I don't know who that's a candidate for. I don't get it. I like Mays Middleton. I love the taxpayer-funded lobbying thing. Someone needs to go after that. That being said, the polling numbers don't look crazy for Mays right now. So really, most people consider this to be a race between you and Aaron Reitz. Aaron does not have the polling numbers you have, but when you look online at what people are saying about you and Aaron, the people on social media really seem to like Aaron. They're very critical of you right now. Obviously, that doesn't always mean anything. Polling numbers don't always mean anything. When it comes down to Election Day, do you think we see some of the hype for Aaron on social media translate over to the ballot box, or do you think the polls are accurate?
No, we will not see that translate. He's not moved out of single digits, and he's not going to move out of single digits. And here's the reason why. The people of Texas are going to want somebody who's done the job, can do the job, has been elected, has been a lawyer, has a proven track record of being a conservative. If you go across all of those things, there's only one candidate who fits all of those descriptions. And let's go piece by piece. You want somebody who's been elected. Aaron Reitz hasn't been elected dog catcher. And the only race he's ever run in, he came in fourth in a state rep race. You go look at, do you want somebody who's actually stood up in court, stood up in front of a judge? I've done that as a federal prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office. I've had my name on all of the filings as the first assistant attorney general, making all of the strategic decisions alongside the AG, filing the litigation, filing the cases that we were putting forward, the briefs that we were filing. And I've done that. I can tell you Mays Middleton hasn't done that. And you need somebody who's a proven conservative. I talked about the scorecard demonstrating that I have the highest record in Texas in Congress, the second in the House of Representatives, fifth out of the Senate and the House, of people who have fidelity to the GOP platform and the president's agenda. But importantly, go down the entire list of scorecards. A-plus ratings, top, ratings, the best in Congress on virtually every scorecard, whether it's guns, whether it's life, whether it's the Freedom Index. I mean, very few people are able to do what I do. And you talked about earlier, we're talking about libertarian support and Ron Paul, who have significant support from the Liberty crowd, significant support from the gun crowd, endorsed by Gun Owners of America, et cetera, significant support from Life, but also has a demonstrated track record and has put his name and his election certificate on the line. You want somebody who's independent. You want somebody who's proven. You want somebody who's an actual lawyer. You want somebody who knows the AG's office. No candidate is remotely close to me on any of those scores.
All right. I want to go deep in the weeds here for just a minute. I did not know about this. A friend of mine who's a journalist tells me you did an investigation into the University of Texas Medical Branch on their gain of function lab research. And apparently nothing came from the investigation, at least not anything that most people know about. Apparently the head of the lab resigned as soon as COVID made landfall in March. Supposedly there were some emails between UTMB and the Wuhan Institute of Virology. What happened there?
Well, we leaned in pretty hard on that, and we were, I think, the only office that was highlighting this massive problem with the taxpayer dollars that were being funneled through this UT system with respect to gain of function. We did end up getting, I think, a positive result in terms of highlighting that and getting changes in terms of what the university was doing and addressing it. But this gets into the issue of why you want to be an executive, be in the AG. Because when you're a member of Congress, you're 1/435th of 1/2 of 1/3 of the federal, establishment up there in D.C. And so you can only do what you can do, right? You got to muster coalitions and you got to get people to vote. You got to move bills. And I do a pretty good job at that, given, that narrow ability as 1/435th. But as an executive, you have the ability in the AG's office to go in and get things done and be able to go try to move the ball. And you can actually raise issues. You can sue. You can also do things with your opinions. When you put out AG opinions, you can force those questions. And you can also get the legislature to act and use the bully pulpit. But there's more room that you've got in the executive branch. So, look, I see lots of things that we're doing every day that we're highlighting in Congress, where we go after an agency or we go highlight something. Obviously now with Trump in the White House, it's different in terms of what we do with the feds, but we're constantly going after or highlighting, as Brian Harrison's highlighting the stuff at Texas A&M and the various woke crap there, we're trumpeting that and putting it out there, reaching out. I reached out to UT when there was some Planned Parenthood funding that we saw in their stream. Then we got that, observed it, went and talked to them, and guess what? They've changed it. So the more we keep doing that, and at the AG's office, you can do a lot more of that than you can even in Congress.
All right, I know we only have a little bit of time left here with you, so I got to ask about this. You have a plan right now to freeze all immigration, all of it completely, no exceptions to that. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, so we've got a bill that we're going to introduce next week called the PAUSE Act. We had to wait because of the shutdown to get all this stuff drafted, but we've got the framework put together, and we're still putting together every piece of it. But the bottom line is we should freeze all immigration, freeze all legal immigration until we've got our house in order. We have 51 million people in the United States who are foreign born. That is about 16-17%. That is the highest percentage we've ever had. Why on earth are we going to continue to import people when we have Americans who can't find jobs? We have Americans who aren't able to afford housing. We have Americans who are suffering. Let's freeze immigration. That could be for 6 months, 6 years, 60 years. I don't know. Let's have the conversation, though, about what we need to do to protect American jobs and American workers. Let's freeze the immigration and then get some fixes. Do we get Plyler v. Doe fixed? I told you about that earlier as AG. Let's stop having a mandate that we have to fund the education for illegal alien children. Let's stop all of the social welfare and health care benefits for illegal aliens. We know it's happening. We're funding it. That was part of the fight over Medicaid funding. It's what the Democrats wanted to do on the shutdown fight. Let's stop that funding and make sure that illegals aren't getting those benefits. Let's go through and fix things like birthright citizenship. The president issued an executive order. Let's make that permanent. Let's make it very clear you're only a citizen if you're born to an American citizen, that you can't come here in this churn and get this benefit as a magnet of people coming here. And let's fix H-1Bs, which have been badly abused while corporations mint money, leaving the American worker behind. And also, I introduced legislation last week to take away the C3 status from CARE. Let's stop, funding with taxpayer dollars the, Council for whatever Arab Islamic Relations or American Islamic Relations, which has literal affiliations with terrorist activities.
Right.
I also introduced legislation to say that we should vet people for their adherence to Sharia law when they come into the United States. You should actually adhere to American values. This is all stuff we need to be doing. I've been leading on it with our bills in H.R. 2 and all of our border bills. We need to keep leading on this front. And I think the president deserves a great deal of credit for what we're doing, but Congress needs to get in behind him.
All right, let's talk about the government shutdown real quick. In the 11th hour, this thing with the hemp ban, this was a surprise to some people. Delta 8, low-level THC. Apparently, Mitch McConnell, who was originally a supporter of the 2018 Farm Bill, was the reason that this got... I don't know what happened with him, why he changed his mind. Only Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, and Thomas Massie seem to have tried to resist this thing. How do you feel about it? Who do you blame? Do you support it? What do you think about it?
Well, obviously, there were two 11th hour provisions. That was one of them. I'll address the other one in a minute in the Senate, which should not have been done. Okay, let's be clear. This is not how you should legislate. And frankly, it's offensive and frustrating.
But you did vote for it.
Well, hold on a second.
Okay.
We voted for the reopening of the government and the funding per the president's request, and because we were looking at people who were hurting because of a shutdown government that Democrats are doing for political purposes. And by the way, we needed to be able to do that in order to get and move forward the president's agenda. So we were 45 days in, and that was the bill that was put before us. Let's talk about the second provision, which was a provision put in there at the 11th hour that would allow senators to have a private right of action against the office of the attorney or, the Department of Justice, looking for basically a payback for the attacks they had on them through Arctic frost. Now, look, that was an offensive, from a libertarian standpoint. You don't want United States senators being targeted by the Department of Justice and having their phone records searched. It's offensive and a massive abuse of justice, abuse of power. But here's the problem. You can't put in a provision that says that a senator can go get a $500,000 payday simply by suing and settling with the Department of Justice. That got stuck in at the 11th hour. I think we're going to fix that on Monday. A bunch of us threw a fit over that. We voted for the bill in order to get the government open, but we're going to vote this, provision on Monday to reverse that. And now I think we're going to have a full debate about what got put in there on the issue of hemp, which you rightly point out was kind of a dispute between McConnell and Rand. And look, I think that should not be the way we legislate issues like that when you've got businesses that were built around the policies that were put in place. There are legitimate concerns about some of the stuff and the various THC levels and whatnot that we need to have a conversation about, but it should not have been put in a must-pass piece of legislation like that.
Trump wants to kill the filibuster. It feels like a mistake to me. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, so this one's interesting, right? Because you talked about my Senate background as Ted's chief of staff, spending time in the Senate. I know this issue really well. I have long over my life said you got to hold that 60-vote threshold because nothing good happens in Washington. So anything that slows down legislation in Washington is a good thing, right? That's my default position. But here's the problem. Right now, I believe Democrats will, with 100% degree certainty, the next time they get the trifecta, kill the filibuster. The only reason they didn't last time was Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. Now, we can hold out hope and hold our breath that a Fetterman, right? But again, it depends on the majority. I mean, they've got 47. If they get 50, 1, 2, 3, 4, you're relying on Fetterman. The point here is when they get that again, they're going to kill it. That's almost certain. So that's the question now is, are we willing to say, let's call the question? So here's my two paths. We either rip the Band-Aid off and say, look, let's just go to 51 and let's go advance an agenda to save America. Or let's call the question at 60. Let's pass a constitutional amendment that says it's going to be 60 for everybody. But what we shouldn't do is sit here and unilaterally disarm and allow Democrats to have the leverage and the benefit to kill us with a 51-vote threshold. Because when they do it, They will pack the court. They will make D.C. a state. They will advance a radical agenda. They will socialize medicine, Medicare for all, take away our freedoms, go after our guns. They will, they will take it for a massive spin. So the question here is, are we going to inspire a new generation of Americans to believe in what we believe in? We better lead. And if all we do is sit back talking about 60 votes and don't lead and deliver, then how are we going to win a generation? We can use reconciliation like we just did to advance some stuff. Fine, let's do that. But we got to be aggressive. We can't hide behind 60 and fail to lead. We've got a once-in-a-lifetime moment right now with President Trump, who's willing to take the system on, and a Republican House and Senate, and we better dang well deliver.
All right, one more real quick question, because I know you got to run, and we're way long on this. Texas, Republican primaries, both parties' primaries, open or closed?
Closed.
This is so obvious.
Yeah. Now,
Shane Nelson wants to spend millions of dollars to keep it open.
So this is not a hard question. But the Constitution, I think, very clearly will make clear that we need to do that. That happens to be in front of Matt Kaczmarek, who is a federal judge, and we'll see what he does. I've got my suspicions of where that will go. My guess is that they're going to find that we have our right to association, that we're going to be able to say that we're going to have a closed primary. My guess is it will get kicked to the legislature to define the parameters of what the election should look like under a closed primary, but we'll see what happens in the litigation. But yeah, of course, it should be closed. It's a non-question. The only question is what do you do to frame it? So, for example, if you're an independent, do you get more say in a general election? Do you have to change the structures of that if it's closed, right? Because right now, independents, at least they can go get a vote or a voice in a primary. But if you take that out and say it's just Republicans and Democrats, how do independents then get a ticket, get a voice in the fall, in the general election? That's a debate we would have on the floor. But of course, they should be closed primaries.
Chip Roy, Congressman Chip Roy, the website, chiproy.com.
It's very complex.
Yeah, it's very, very hard to remember. We thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thanks, Kenny. I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming in, man.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Pursuit of Happiness Radio.
You are now in tune to the sound